All right. Welcome to Operator Syndrome. Um, we have a special guest with us today. We're very happy to have feedback from people who are listening to Operator Syndrome in the larger sphere of things. And today we're joined by Ernie Jimenez. He's a hospital corpsman, Navy hospital corpsman, wearing my Navy shirt here.
All right.
Yeah, and served with the Marines. For those who may not know the term hospital corpsman in the Navy, we call them hospital corpsmen. In the Army, they're medics, right? They do the same job. A lot of training in combat trauma, how to stop bleeding, CPR, all the basics that have saved countless lives, and couldn't be more thankful. We had, every SEAL platoon has a corpsman in it. Actually, for a platoon, we have two corpsmen, one per squad. One's more senior, one's junior, and these are fully trained SEALs, but they've also been trained as corpsmen to be medics. A lot of our guys go on to course called 18 Delta, which is a special forces. It's pretty high level school for medics. But anyway, we want to get into Ernie's story here, and just see, the larger orb of all of this, as Ernie knows, and those who've been listening for a while, is, walk through your story, but also like what stuff are you struggling with, or when you got out, what did you struggle with? And kind of, I think Patrick and I just have an eye toward getting veterans talking so that we don't close up. I think we know that the suicide rates are very alarming right now for veterans of all stripes, and I think the worst thing is to just think, I'm just not going to talk. I'm just going to close up and shut down, and that seems to be the worst route to take. So with all of that, let's get Ernie talking. And tell me where you grew up, like what kind of family, and then kind of what led you into the Navy in the first place.
Sure. Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in South Texas called Ingleside, Texas. It's actually a Navy town,
Mm-hmm.
or was a Navy town for a long time. So I grew up around a lot of sailors. Uh, my great grandfather was a World War II bosun mate, and then my grandfather on the other side was an electrician's mate in Vietnam. So Navy
Yeah.
family on both sides. Saw a lot of sailors and a lot of kids in school and stuff. Their parents were sailors and stuff like that, and I was kind of thought that was pretty cool. When they would be going on ships, and it just kind of was in the back of my head as a small child. But yeah, I remember my dad he didn't serve, but he always really looked up to Marines and sailors and soldiers and really every branch. But he loved to talk about it and tell me all about it. And I remember I mainly was always my interests were really with the Marines and the Navy both, just because of my family. My uncle was a retired gunnery sergeant,
Right.
and my older cousin, was a couple years older than me. He joined the Marines in the early 2000s, so of course he was in Iraq as well. Um, so yeah, it was kind of something I knew I was always going to do. Um, Came time to like high school time, I was a pretty average student and athlete. I I don't, well, I think everyone in my generation, we wanted to. A lot of us, we looked at the Marines, Army Rangers,
Mhm.
infantry, the SEALs, special operations, like that. That was all super cool and in the forefront of our minds, with all the movies and video games and media. It's also about the time of YouTube and stuff was getting popular.
Mhm.
And I remember watching a video about I think it was Fifth Marines in Ramadi,
Oh yeah.
um, and I remember thinking like, oh man, like that's awesome. And it had the cool music in the background and everything like that, and it was said like to our Marines and sailors, and I was like, sailors,
Yeah.
you know, uh, and like I remember reading the comments like Navy Corpsman. I was like, what's a Navy Corpsman? I didn't know what that really meant. Kind of ignored it. Talk to all the different recruiters, I think, as a lot of us do, every
Huh?
different branch. My dad kind of was like, hey, like, I'll come with you. We'll talk to these guys. The Army guy showed up. I remember the day I turned 17, he showed up to my door. And he was trying to get me to join the delayed entry, and
Hmm.
we we didn't really like the splitting up the basic training and then coming back for
Yeah.
AIT afterwards and all that. And I kind of was leaning towards the infantry at the time, so that wasn't going to work out for me anyhow, or maybe it does, but
Yeah.
my 17-year-old mind didn't really get it. But went to the Marines, and their kind of recruiting tactic is like, oh, you're probably not good enough, or that's the kind of their deal. And I kind of was not the most confident kid, kind of a quiet,
Yeah.
so it just kind of put me off a little bit.
Right.
But the Navy recruiter finally called me. The guy was a builder, Navy CB builder,
Yeah.
first class. So
Yeah.
he was kind of, and I kind of explained to him what I wanted. And he's like, dude, we have that in the Navy. He's like, I'm in the CBs. Our whole thing is we build, we fight, and they support the SEAL teams and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And so I was like, cool. So I had that in my mind, and a couple other jobs I think I looked at was maybe doing damage control, like firefighting
Yeah.
stuff, and I
Yeah.
knew I wanted to do something along those lines. So go through the recruiter to MEPS and everything, and we're in line to get our jobs. And last minute, I was like Navy corpsman, you know. And I asked that job detailer, I was like, "Can I be a Navy corpsman?" I didn't even know it was called hospital corpsman. I just said Navy
Yeah.
corpsman, and he's like, "Yeah, here you go." And so that was that. That I did that my junior year. So my whole senior year, I pretty much knew that's what I was going to do, and I had a plan. So that's what appealed to me. As I had that plan.
So you
Um,
were going in, if I got this right, you were first thinking about just infantry.
Correct.
Then
Hmm.
all of a sudden, Corman caught your eye.
Hmm.
What was it about it that caught that just because I mean, they're kind of pretty okay. So circling back, yeah, you can be in with an infantry company very easily as a corpsman. It happens all the time.
Sure.
The Marine medics, but thinking, all right, I want to be a Marine fighter ground pounder versus corpsman is kind of a that's kind of a wide shift.
Absolutely. And I guess I didn't know that at the time. Because the recruiters were like, "Oh yeah, like we have corpsmen." Like the CB was like, "Yeah, we had a corpsman with us.
Oh yeah.
You'll
Okay.
for sure go with the Marines." He didn't even like really mention the clinical side at all. It's not
Okay.
even something that I thought about. And as a kid, I wasn't. I don't want to say squeamish, but like I didn't really even think with all the implications. I just
Mm.
thought they were doing cool guy stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's just
And
like anything else. Like when like back in the day before they had a special operator rating, yeah, I had to pick a rate. And I was sitting in the recruiter's office and I'm like, "Well, what I just want to be a SEAL. I don't know about these rates." And he goes, "Well,
mhm,
here's a list. You can pick one of these." And I'm like, "Parachute rigger, that looks cool."
mhm,
I just picked it, not knowing you cannot be promoted in that rate very easily.
yep,
But had a
same here,
parachute,
yeah,
so it's like these things just fall into line and you don't
sure,
sometimes don't even know why. So yeah, so you went on, you joined as a corpsman, you went to Great Lakes. They
yeah,
call it
yeah.
Great Mistakes.
Oh, absolutely, great mistakes, yeah. So, yeah, I was kind of the motivator of my like delayed entry program,
Okay.
and I remember they made me like the RPOC, like recruit chief petty officer of the
Yeah.
DEP, so I had already learned all my ranks and general orders. Like I was ready to just cruise through boot camp because I thought I'm going to the Marines, like this is just a formality type of thing.
Huh.
And when I got there, though, I'll admit, like I think that was a bad attitude to have going into boot camp. Like I
Oh
made it
yeah.
just fine. I didn't have any issues. I never really got in trouble,
Yeah.
but I kind of wasn't real receptive to like the idea of going on a ship at all.
Yeah.
Uh, it just was like, well, this isn't what I'm doing. Um, I kind of looking back wish that I'd kind of cooperated a little more and been like, oh yeah, like let me learn some of this like Navy stuff, because I talk to guys about the Navy and I have no idea, I can't really relate a lot of times.
Yeah.
But but yeah, it wasn't very difficult, I wouldn't say physically, and um all my Marines and buddies and stuff like that, like they talk about their boot camp. It's a huge hallmark for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just can't really relate on that. I'm just like, yeah, it was something I did, but
Yeah.
And I'm sure for others it might be different, but for me, it just kind of, it was just a taste, of what it was like. Now I did have one of my head instructors. He was a corpsman, hospital corpsman, first class, and he was a tough dude. Like you would have thought he was a Marine. Like he had the haircut,
Hmm.
his all of his ribbons and badges. He looked like he was a Marine, but just was wearing the white Navy working uniform. Um, and I remember like he quickly reminded us we were not corpsmen yet. There was about five of us that all thought we were like, he's like, no, you guys are not corpsmen yet. Like you guys got to pass through here first. And
Yeah.
I actually, I guess I glossed over this. I was actually a musician
Hmm.
coming up through school, and so they put me in like a special like band like thing on Saturdays. We'd like perform for the families and stuff, and so
Okay.
I'd caught the eyes of the chief musician there, and she
Wow.
wanted me to join the band and re-rate.
Huh.
And
Like the Navy band, like a band. Yeah.
for the Great Lakes, for Great Lakes,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that would have been automatic E4, and
Oh, yeah.
and all that. And he kind of pulled me aside and said, like, hey, like I think you'll have a great career as a musician, but like you'll be a better man for go ahead and experiencing war and going out there with your Marines. And so ultimately I think he knew we were all going, but he couldn't let on, at the fact at
Yeah.
first. But yeah, so that was kind of my introduction in boot camp. Yeah, it was kind of it was kind of cool. We got to shoot pistols and shotguns and stuff, and just a little taste of it. But
Yeah.
yeah, um,
So what was next? You moved on from there to A school, presumably, and
yeah,
that's there at Great Lakes.
yes, it was. Now it's in San Antonio,
San
here in
Antonio.
Texas,
Gotcha.
and so yeah, so back then they said across the street.
Yeah.
You're going across the street.
Yeah.
Um, I remember one day, actually, it was more than five of us. There's like 10 of us in my division that were all going corpsman.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, but they put us on a bus and they dropped us off. And I remember they had I think it was a culinary specialist, like a cook, third class that was on staff at the hospital corpsman school.
Yeah.
And we were all locked on, like, yes, petty officer, no petty. She was like, y'all don't have to call me all that, just get on the bus. Like
Yeah.
we didn't realize you kind of drop the whole boot camp act.
Right. Right. Especially in the Navy.
Oh yeah, and we thought it was on though, game time.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
And we got there and we met all the instructors, and all of them, minus one or two, they were all what we call green side corpsmen,
Yeah.
meaning they go with the Marines.
Marines.
Yeah,
Just for to insert for our listeners, so the Navy and the Marine Corps have a very special kind of relationship, and of all the branches, you know, the Navy, I think they oversee the Marine Corps. I mean, like I think the commandant of the Marine Corps reports to the chief of naval operations. I believe that's how it works, something like that. So Marines. I mean, the word Marine, not to insult anybody's intelligence, that just means water. Marine is water, and the Navy gets the Marines there, and then the Marines take the beaches, go do their thing. And so there's always been this really close relationship between the Navy and the Marines, such that as is in Ernie's story, all of the medics, which are called, as we said before, hospital corpsmen in the Navy, are going to support Marine infantry units, like on all levels, like whatever level, not just infantry, any
sure.
Marine unit. And so when I served as a chaplain, just additionally, I was a staff corps officer for the Navy. I'm a naval officer, but I was assigned to Marine 4th Medical Battalion for a while because, again, the Navy supplies certain specialists to the Marine Corps. So a lot of people might not catch that. It doesn't work that way in the Air Force and the Army, really. Traditionally, they're pretty separate. They've got their own corps and everything, but yeah, we're lockstep. So
Yeah, and they really drove that home during like are like, I want to say kind of like an in doc. We were kind of there on overflow,
Hmm.
because there were so many classes, because this is 2008. So they're really plussing up these classes and getting them out to the operation. Like, I remember some guys were graduating and reporting to an operational unit immediately, sometimes even skipping further training.
Right.
Um, so we were on hold for about a week, and they really hammered home the history of the hospital corpsman,
Hmm.
and kind of they really wanted us to soak in like the I don't want to say severity, but like this like seriousness of the job, and where
Oh,
you're
of
probably
course.
going.
Yeah.
Um, we learned later, it's not necessarily just infantry. Like, there's for sure corpsmen that
Right.
they work with the wing and marine logistics groups, which have the medical battalions.
Right.
Um, and then even as far as like recon, I think now that they're their own separate thing now. Like, they're still
Mhm.
corpsmen, but they have their own separate training pipeline.
Yeah.
And then of course on Navy ships, that
Yeah.
really everywhere in the Navy,
Everywhere.
they're there. Um, but yeah, they really hammered home the Marine stuff though. Like, all of the instructors were all combat action ribbon,
Yeah.
hard dudes, and they didn't speak like the instructors at boot camp. They all talked like Marines.
Yeah. There's a difference.
And I just remember like, wow, these guys are so cool. Like that for me in my 18-year-old brain was just like, these guys are cool. And like I
Yeah.
want to be like them. So yeah, eventually get in class. The PT automatically, physical training is much harder than boot camp was. Like they were preparing us for where we were about to go. I'll
Yeah.
say that. Um,
Oh yeah.
we had a lot of guys in and out of the training. Some couldn't. We learn you learn a lot of stuff in that training. It's um, from anatomy and physiology, like basic medical terminology. This is before you even touch a patient.
Right.
Um, and I remember the anatomy and physiology stuff is where people were dropping like flies.
Yeah. Hard.
I think I had 4 or 5 different roommates in that time, that 3 or 4 months. Um, I didn't have so much trouble. I will say I had to study, but it wasn't anything crazy for me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we ended up graduating. So this was like September when I checked in. Ended up graduating around like right around Christmas time, and they kind of graduated 3 classes at a time, like trying to get us out to training.
Yeah.
I remember, towards the end of training, getting orders. They gave us like, they called it a dream sheet, and I think that's the dream sheet is for a reason. Is you
Yeah.
may or may not get what you ask for.
Yeah.
I remember at the time it was like, hey, you can pick East Coast, West Coast, a C school, which is like a technical training, like you can be like a radiological tech or
Right.
surgical tech, something like that. Um, Field medical training battalion, or overseas. And so I'd picked field medical training battalion because I wanted to be with the Marines. And I got it. I didn't have to fight much for that one.
Uh-huh.
um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and I remember like we'd gone on some for the Marine Corps birthday happens on
Yeah.
November 10th.
Big deal.
It's a big deal, and the local reservists there on the base,
Yeah.
um, they did a run, right?
Yeah.
Boots and utes is what we call, running without, basically running in your camis. Um, and the instructors invited some of us that were going greenside to go on the run. And
Yeah.
I'll say that really, like, was me sipping the Kool-Aid there. I was like, I loved it,
Yeah. Yeah.
going on this run and shouting all the Marine Corps cadences and stuff like that. It was real motivating stuff. Um, so I was all in, I guess you could say, at that point. Um,
Then you went on to Camp Pendleton soon thereafter.
yes. Yeah. So basically from there, and we found out with the with orders, right? We just thought, Greenside or the Marines was the Marines. It's no, not quite. You've got different levels. You've got um the 3 primary. You've got division, which is
Mhm.
primarily infantry and ground combat. You've got the wing, which is aircraft.
Aircraft. Yeah.
and also Kazovac. So, there's some cool stuff that those guys do, is like, for sure. And
Yeah.
then you've got, Marine Logistics Group, which is, that's your medical battalions and surgical companies,
Yeah.
so kind of your more hands-on, like, patient care stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't get any of those at first. I got
Mhm.
orders to training and then to the hospital, in San Diego, Naval Medical Center, San Diego.
The
So,
Balboa.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
hmm So, reported to, Camp Pendleton, and I remember they had us check in at the USO. And I remember, like, seeing these Marines in their, alpha uniforms,
Hmm.
and, like, I remember thinking, like, oh man, like, these guys are cool, even, like, not realizing they're brand new privates and PFCs, like,
Right.
E1s, E2s, and, like, they're just as scared as I was, probably, but they seemed so, like, confident and everything, and I was just in there in my navy dress blues, and
Well, the Marines have some cool ass uniforms. Let's
oh,
stick.
for sure, for sure,
Yeah.
yeah, they just seemed like cool dudes, and they were all like,
Yeah.
I remember they called me Doc for the first time because they saw
Oh
my
yeah.
my rating badge,
Sure.
and I
Right.
was like, that's right, I thought that was cool, man. So
It,
I was like, hey, you guys want to go in together on a cab to get to
yeah.
Pendleton? So we did that,
Sure.
and I remember, like, that was my first little taste of, like, the kind of the camaraderie between. I didn't even know these guys,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Well, one thing for our listeners' sake, Marines really respect their corpsmen. They call him Doc because I mean that's a kind of a term of commendation. I mean, we're okay. A corpsman is not a medical doctor per se, but they know a lot. And sometimes I've gone to corpsmen who had been to some of these courses that higher courses that I mean, I'd rather have them be looking at me than a doctor in many cases because they knew more practical stuff that would help me. But just to circle back on that's a real respect. These Marines, they treasure their corpsmen and they call them docs, and because how many lives have been saved by Navy corpsmen right in the blood, sweat, and tears of it all. So that's pretty
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
absolutely. So, yeah, that was a big deal, and that was always the thing, was like, especially in Corpsman A school, it was like, do not call yourself doc. You got to
Yeah.
earn that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that was, and even in field med school, was, which is where I was headed from there. It was like, you guys have not earned that yet. You guys are corpsmen and you've earned that, but that's a sacred title.
Right.
Um, so, yeah, I check in to Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton because I was on hold. Because, like I said, there were so many classes going through.
Hmm.
Um, and I think all the reservists, like the guys that were reservists that were, like, in boot camp and A school with me, those guys had went to, training right away because
Hmm.
they had a timeline to get these guys through training. So I kind of hung out on Camp Pendleton for the hospital, maybe 2 months. Yeah, the training's 2 months, and just did a lot of PT, to prepare for training. And I actually they gave some of us jobs,
Hmm.
and I got a job. They had me assigned to work on a multi specialty ward, just kind of your general, ICU, pre op and post op surgery stuff, and they gave me the night shift. So, like, right off the bat, as a brand new corpsman, I'm like doing stuff.
Yeah.
I'm in there, starting IVs,
Sure.
administering medication and helping move patients, and, like, a lot of good stuff, like, right off the bat as a brand new
Yeah.
guy.
I
So,
would say that's almost like maybe the best kind of training you get because it's all triage. You're there seeing pretty much everything that happens.
sure.
That's really good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate because a lot of the guys, like, weren't so lucky. Like, they had them, like, cutting the grass and,
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
picking up trash and stuff, and
Jeez.
I luck of the draw, that they had picked me for that, and so I'd
Yeah.
gotten a lot of, like, confidence in my medical skill set, and I was building that skill set while I was there, um, which I was very fortunate because, in a couple months, we ended up reporting to Field Medical Training Battalion, which is, still in Camp Pendleton, but it's like,
Hmm.
I tell people it's kind of like our Marine Corps entry level training, really. Uh, you show up in Navy uniforms and you graduate in Marine uniforms.
Yeah.
Um, and it's very much like that. I guess that sort of you're kind of earning it all over again.
Right. Right.
I remember they had us. We were in the old Navy utility uniform with the light blue shirts and the
Done
yeah
great. Yeah.
yeah, and but with Marine Corps boots, the desert boots,
Yeah.
like looking like goofballs in a med bag, and like they would, and like little by little, then you got the camis, but we couldn't
Yeah.
wear we wear like a shield device on our left collar. We
Right.
can't wear that yet, and it was kind of
Yeah.
like a little by little, you earn it.
Yeah.
And that was good stuff. You learn a lot of Marine training. We shoot the M4 rifle. Um,
Did you guys qualify at 500 yards?
we didn't qualify. It was just I didn't get to do that till I was with
Okay.
my unit.
Okay.
No, we just did they said it was always a maybe. Like, well, you guys might be
Yeah.
able
Yeah.
to, but it ended up just being a fan fire with the M4 familiarization.
Right.
Try not to use too much jargon.
Yeah. That's all right. That's all right.
But yeah,
Yeah.
they were like M4s with like iron sights, like
Yeah.
you know, they were
Totally.
brand new rifles. I guess like they had just got them.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I guess the classes before us had M16, so we were one of the first to have the brand new M4s, and it was super cool. But they tried to have us do drill and stuff like Marine Corps drill, which is kind of goofy with like the short M4. We were like kind of.
Yeah.
I'm sure we looked ridiculous to the Marines that were right next to us, but
Yeah. They take a lot of pride in their marching and their
yeah, and
polish.
trying to get a bunch of sailors to do that. I don't.
It's impossible. It's not in our DNA. It's sick.
No, it's just not, it's always been something, even in units way later, they'd have us
Yeah.
go out there for ceremonies and I'd be like, well, I'm here, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, we had like mixture of Marines and sailor instructors. We had like Marine, like infantry corporals and sergeants and staff sergeants. And then, the equivalent petty officers and chiefs and the
Yeah.
Navy side. And, it was a pretty cool experience. We did everything from like basic, like MOUT, CQB training, close quarters battle, martial arts, like basic
Yeah.
Marine Corps martial arts program.
Right.
Um, yeah, it was just kind of a little. I'd say you go on and do much cooler stuff, honestly,
Yeah.
but it's a good taste of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Basic 101 going to war.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. Um, yeah, so graduated that and head down to Naval Medical Center, San Diego, and most people call it Balboa Hospital.
Yeah. Balboa.
Yeah, and I check in my Navy dress blues, and they're like, "Oh, you just came from field medical training? Like, we'll send you down to Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, like
Yeah.
which is not necessarily a green side or Marine unit. I mean, it is, but
Yeah.
it's supported by regular Navy,
Sure.
uh, like a Navy medical unit. But
Sure.
I guess it was beneficial to have a bunch of guys familiar with Marine.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty cool experience working there, working with the drill instructors. Um,
MCRD.
hmm Yeah, and I remember like walking into the clinic, and you're shouting, like those DIs only speak at one volume. And yeah, it was like, I remember one of the corpsmen was like, "Hey, go out there and yell at those guys and tell them, ears, eyeballs, who's
Yeah.
here for sick call, and me, I was like, oh, okay, ears. And they're like, no, 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 you got to like shout.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like they don't, yeah. And,
Part of the course.
yeah, so I did a lot of sick call, a lot of, I learned a lot about upper respiratory stuff. That's what those kids get. They all, young, they're all young guys between 18 to usually 26, I guess would probably be considered an old recruit there.
Yeah.
A lot of pneumonia, a lot of bronchitis, just like learning tons and tons of reps. Like we're doing 20 patients a day each, you
Yeah.
know. So learning a ton about medicine and going out and supporting the training events and stuff.
Could you
And
guys prescribe medicine like antibiotics, or did you have to have a physician to?
so at that level, it was like you didn't prescribe it necessarily. You could like you basically would recommend it,
Yeah.
and then you'd present it to what we call either an independent duty corpsman, which is like a special corpsman that's at least usually E6 and above, and or a medical officer, either
Right.
physician assistant, nurse practitioner, doctor.
Right.
And you kind of say like, hey, I got this guy. You explain all the symptoms, and I want to put in these drugs, and then they'll be like, yeah, that sounds good, or they'll disagree and kind of
Yeah.
adjust it a little bit.
Right.
But essentially, though, like with recruit medicine, and like we were just kind of treating by the herd, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're just kind of we were treated very aggressively there.
Yeah.
So it was like antibiotics, get this guy back to training, because those guys don't want to. They don't want to sit
Right.
and
Flounder. Yeah.
yeah, because they'll get dropped, and that's like I think kind of a fate worse than death over there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But
It's really great. Yeah, we would. Yeah, a lot of times, now some of the SEAL corpsmen had, I don't know what, I mean, they would go on to like 18 Delta and
mhm,
courses that would really, but they could get us almost anything. Uh,
sure,
but that was kind of a little different. We were in the, downrange. I'd be like, hey doc, I need, antibiotics or, you know, Tylenol 3 with codeine
sure.
and stuff like that. They could,
Yeah, it really is just up to your medical officer and who you're working under.
right,
With the Marines, I had like with like the like operationally, which we'll get to here in a minute. But operationally, I kind of had a little more leeway like that because there's just no time to take these guys to sick call
right,
for everything. But
right.
but yeah, in the training environment, they were a little more, I guess, a little more strict. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, these days, I think the guys that go to 18 Delta, they call them special operations independent duty corpsmen, and it used to be like a recon only thing, and I think now they're starting to send them to NSW as well, so
Yeah,
to kind of plus up you guys too. So
right,
um, yeah, that's so, and you kind of always they used to call them SARCs, special amphibious reconnaissance corpsmen,
right.
but now they call it SOIDC. So
Everything changes. I can't even keep up with the half of it.
oh yeah, this.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So eventually they asked me, like, they say, hey, can you swim? I'm like, yeah, I can swim. Okay. Uh, like, okay, we need a corpsman for the pool. The Like they're on the depot, and like, so
Right.
go ahead and go report over there, and they'll issue that I got to wear the UDT trunks and the
Oh, cool.
green
Yeah,
drill
yeah.
instructor shirt and
Green
everything like that.
green t-shirts and the UDT trunks. Yep.
Yeah, and like I remember, like I was like, oh man, I made it now,
Yeah.
and the drill instructors were like, hey, they taught me all kind, like, hey, well, we got to get you some like qual to us.
Yeah, yeah.
So I ran swim qual 4 through 1 in one day, just ran them all,
Hmm.
and some of it I was like, okay, we're pushing my limits here a little bit, but
Yeah, I bet.
swimming with the pack and all
Y-
that stuff. But
Yeah,
once I was qualified, that I did that for about a month, and that was pretty cool. It was like
yeah.
no more. I didn't have to show up in camis. I showed up every day, and that was my uniform of the day. It's pretty
They would
sweet.
they wouldn't know like back, yeah, they wouldn't know if you were a SEAL or not wearing that stuff.
Yeah,
That's what we would wear to muster in the morning.
yeah,
The UD
yeah.
shorts and green t-shirts, but
And
that's really cool.
and I'm just an E3 at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm working with all these drill instructors, and like I, I was kind of worried, like kind of scared, like these guys are always yelling, and
Yeah.
but these guys are all on a break essentially. Like they're all swim instructors, and they're just kind of on their break between regular cycles.
Right.
They were just the coolest guys ever, and like they trained me up on all kinds of stuff, like water survival and all this stuff. They
Yeah.
were always very 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 good about like sharing their knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and of course, being the junior guy, it was always like, hey, go ahead and swim out the lines in the morning, and
Of
all the
course.
kind of like junior guy work I got to do, but it made me a lot stronger and a lot more fit for sure.
Yeah.
But shortly after that, or well, I thought I had it made. One of my petty officers showed up in his uniform, and he's like, "Hey, Chief needs to talk to you." And I was like, "Oh no."
Yeah, that's
He's like,
not.
"Yeah, go ahead and throw your service uniform on and go see him." And so I did, and with my two ribbons on and everything, and
Yeah,
I go over there, and he's not upset with me or anything, but he's like, "Hey, how do you went to field med school, right?" And I said, "Oh, yes, Chief." He's all right. Well, how do you feel about deploying? And I was like, honestly, a little nervous, for sure. I mean, you see everything
yeah,
at that time. It was very well covered
yeah,
on the news and everything like that. But that's what I came in to do, and so I said, "Yeah, like um, I'd like to go ahead and go."
yeah,
And so he's like, "Okay, good." Every hospital has a little unit called POMI, stands for Plans, Operations, Missions, and Intelligence, I think. And basically, they handle the I guess essentially kind of like deployments for
yeah,
guys on shore duty that need to go out, like needs the
yeah, yeah,
Navy.
yeah.
And there's like 10 of us there
Right.
that they got tagged to deploy from throughout the hospital system.
I'll be damned.
And they're like, "Hey,
Y-
you know, oh, good,
Yeah. I mean, you had hit all the wickets to kind of line yourself up for that
sure,
trajectory. So that was
yeah."
that was
And,
good.
and some of the senior first classes, the E6s, they would always kind of tease us like, "Oh, I'm not even gonna learn your name, new guy, because you're going down range,"
Uh-huh.
kind
Yeah.
of thing. And so I was like, okay. It was in the back of my mind, but I'm not gonna. I was swimming at the pool every day. I thought I was kind of like, man, like
Right.
my mentality had kind of shifted to like I've got this is what the Navy's like. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, things got real like very quickly.
Right.
I go. There's like 10 of us there, and he's like, "Hey, you guys got 5 days to get this package, like get all your shots and your physical
Yeah.
done and everything, and you're reporting to back to Camp Pendleton to division, First Marine
I'll be
Division."
damned.
And
Well, yeah,
go-
sorry.
oh no, no, good.
Well, I was just gonna say we're coming up on time for the first episode. That'd be a good jumping off point if we record the next one,
Sure,
we'll jump into your journey downrange.
yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, that's it's amazing how I'm just keeping an eye on our time. We try to keep them in a
Yo, yeah,
certain zone, but I've got a lot more questions for you, and I think you're just warming up to going to see what's really going on downrange.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah.
All right, well, Operator Syndrome episode, I have no idea. And this is Ernie. Very good to meet him and talk about his experience as a veteran. So we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.